In this question, we want to be able to use a calculator to approximate each of the expressions below. And we want to make sure that we're calculating these out in radians rounded to 2 decimal places. So let's take a look at part A. We're going to be calculating inverse secant of 3. And keep in mind you do not have an inverse secant button on your calculator. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of rewriting here. And we're going to let theta be equal to the inverse secant of 3. And then let's go ahead and take secant of both sides. And what's going to happen here on this right-hand side is the secant and the inverse secant are opposite operations. They're going to cancel each other out. And we're going to be left with secant of theta is equal to 3. Now we can go ahead and use our identities to rewrite secant of theta. This is the same thing as 1 over cosine of theta. And now we have an equation that we want to solve for cosine. So we're going to multiply both sides here by cosine theta. And on this left-hand side, these are going to cancel. And then we can go ahead and divide both sides by 3. This is going to give us the statement cosine of theta is equal to 1/3. Okay. And since we want to use our calculator for this, make sure your calculator's in radian mode. And we want to go to 2 decimal places. So we're going to go ahead and do inverse cosine of both sides here. I'm going to go ahead and write it out the long way. What's going to happen is this inverse cosine and the cosine on the left are going to cancel each other out. And we're going to end up with theta is equal to inverse cosine of 1/3. And this is what we're going to be typing in to our calculator. Again, make sure it's in radian modes. And when we do that, we're going to get 1.23 as our radian value. Right, now that was a long process that we went through to do that problem. You don't necessarily have to go through all of those steps each time you do a question like this, if you recognize what's happening. Right? If you take a look at the function that we started with inverse secant. Remember that secant is related to cosine. Right? And take a look at what we ended up typing into our calculator down here. We ended up typing in inverse cosine on our calculator, but it wasn't this 3 that we used. We actually used the reciprocal of it, 1 over 3. So that's kind of a nice shortcut to look at when you're working through problems like this one. So let's try the shortcut method using part B. Right? If I'm working with inverse cosecant, right, cosecant is related to sine. So in my calculator, I'm going to be using my inverse sine button. And instead of the -4, I'm going to be typing in a -1/4 into my calculator. And this is going to give me my value for theta. Again, we're working in radians. And when you type this into your calculator, you should get a value of -0.25.